Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with Joe Lalo this week, and we've got a good guest for you. We're going to have be pumping him for lots of good information, Tom Corson-Knowles. And we're going to be talking about Amazon ads. I know a lot of people are going to be interested because that just opened up into you don't have to be in KDP Select anymore in order to participate. So we're going to talk about that, and then a little bit about kind of some email marketing stuff, maybe a little more than just the basics. And then we're going to kind of dive into some alternatives to social media for those who have tried Facebook and Twitter and just don't get it. So we'll talk a little bit about what other things you can be doing to sell your books online. But let me introduce you real quick, Tom. According to his bio, he's an entrepreneur, a blogger, an international best-selling author of more than 20 books. Started his first business at age 13. He was manufacturing SAD lamps out of his father's garage. That sounds cool. I needed one of those when I was in Seattle. By the time he graduated from Indiana University Kelley School of Business at age 22, he was earning a full-time income from his first successful business, which he started in his dorm room. Tom then decided to share the keys to success he learned along his journey to becoming financially independent through his books, educational video courses, and seminars. Today, he teaches new and established authors and writers how to earn a full-time income by being successful writers, publishers, and marketers. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay and Joe. It's great to be here.
All right, we're excited to talk to you. We usually have guests on who are other science fiction and fantasy authors, and that's great. They've succeeded. We want to know how they do it. But I thought, it'd be really cool to talk to you since you're kind of coaching authors, it sounds like. So you should have maybe that higher level perspective, a lot of experience with quite a few different people. But why don't you just tell us about your background and kind of what made you decide to get into helping authors?
Yeah, so I started as an author myself. I wrote a document when I was 19 years old. I was in college as a freshman and in business school, and I saw my classmates, and their dream job was to go to Wall Street and become investment bankers and work 100 hours a week in a cubicle to earn a six-figure income right out of college. And for them, like, their dream was like my nightmare. Like, I couldn't imagine living that kind of lifestyle, working 100 hours a week, not having time to eat or sleep or take care of myself or have a social life or a family. And so I just started open up like a document on my computer and started writing a personal manifesto of what I thought it meant to lead a successful life, and share it with some few people. They said, "Hey, this could be a book. You should get this traditionally published." And so I was like, "Oh, I could be a traditionally published author. This will be great." And so a naive 19-year-old, I went out and tried to find some agents and publishers to publish my work, and just failed miserably. It just felt like I was kind of banging my head against the wall year after year after year. Couldn't get any deals or interest in my book. And so I pretty much gave up on the dream until about 5 years ago. Someone just mentioned, why don't you just self-publish your book on Amazon Kindle? And, that to me is just like this light bulb moment, because I didn't understand that you could do that. Because, when I started researching self-publishing 10 years ago, when I wrote my first book, if you wanted to self-publish a book, you had to spend $25,000, order 5,000 books, have them shipped to your garage. Every time you wanted to sell a book, you had to go out, collect the money from the customer, make the sale, lick the envelopes. You had to have a climate controlled environment so the books didn't get moldy. Like, it just seemed like this crazy, wacky business model. Like, who would actually, print 5,000 books and store them in their garage? It didn't make sense to me. So when I found out you could just like upload a file to Amazon and they would sell the book for you, and there wasn't any, inventory cost or anything like that, it just seemed like a no-brainer to me. So I did that, and the thing was that I was like so embarrassed I had to self-publish my first book. I didn't tell anyone. So I just uploaded the file to Amazon and kind of forgot about it. So I checked back in my account like a month later, I had like 11 sales, and that for me was like my light bulb moment, because I realized, look, if I can sell 11 books on Amazon without telling anyone what I had done, imagine what I could do if I treat this like a real business. And so that's what I did. So every day I would get up at 5:30 a.m. like so excited to write on my next book, because I've been like a writer my whole life. I had like 12 manuscripts on my computer that were, all the way finished and professionally edited to like halfway finished to like, just a brief outline here and there. And so I finished up those books and had like my first $12,000 month, like a month 10, just from ebook royalties on Amazon. And so that's when I started getting other authors asking me for advice on, how did you write your books? How did you publish them? How did you market them? And so I just started creating some free videos on YouTube, and those went really well. And so I decided I'd create a video training course for authors, and that went really well. And then out of that, my students asked me some of my students said, hey, I like what you're teaching about marketing and promotion and all this stuff, but I don't want to do, the formatting and the cover design and all the hard publishing work and the marketing work. Can you just do it for me? And so that's why I started TCK Publishing about 4 years ago. So that's kind of how I got involved in the industry.
Awesome. And okay, I have to ask, you mentioned mold and you do these seasonal effective order lamps, or you did. Are you in Seattle?
No, I'm not. I grew up in Indiana. Right now I'm in Hawaii, where it's very
All
wet
right.
here.
I
So.
can see Hawaii, at least being moldy. I don't know about,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Now, I actually don't think I mentioned in your interview or your intro the name of your podcast and what that's all about. So, do you want to tell us about your podcast?
Yeah, so it's called the Publishing Profits Podcast, and pretty much my idea was just like I just wanted to interview successful authors who are doing really well, like earning a full-time income or more. And so every week we just interview a best-selling author, sometimes like 8 literary agents and marketers and publishers, to talk about like what's working right now and how they're actually growing their platform, how they're growing their audience, and how they're growing their sales.
Cool. I wanted to mention that in case, we got podcast listeners here, obviously, and so maybe they want to check it out if they don't know it yet. Do you get more, is it more towards nonfiction, or do you also have shows geared towards fiction authors?
Yeah, the podcast is all over the gambit, just like the publishing company. So we publish everything that's trade book, so all trade books, so anything mass market, so fiction, nonfiction, all major genres, subgenres, niches. The only thing we don't really do is like poetry, because I found about maybe once every couple of decades someone actually earns a full-time income writing poetry. It's a very tough market, but pretty much every other market we cover here and there on the show.
All right, cool. Yeah, I haven't run into those 6-figure indie poetry authors yet.
Yeah,
Maybe they're out there. I don't know.
I'm looking for them though. I'd love to interview one. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear about. And then it would make me feel inept because I can't write poetry. But all right, well, why don't we jump into kind of the first little topic here? I mentioned that people are probably considering Amazon ads now that it's available to everyone, or like, I've tried it a few times. I've actually had one campaign that's done pretty well that I keep renewing, but I know especially early on, I tried it and I just couldn't spend any money like I wanted to, but I was doing it, well, why don't I ask you first, kind of like, for those who don't have any experience with it, how are the Amazon ads working, and how can we get involved, and what are they all about?
Yeah, totally. So Amazon released their program. It's called Amazon Marketing Services. And basically, if you've already published a book on Amazon Kindle, if you have a Kindle Direct Publishing account, you basically just log into your account and you simply click promote and advertise on your book page next to your book. And then on the right-hand side of that page, they'll say like create an ad campaign. And when you do that, they'll ask you to create your account with Amazon Marketing Services. And then you get 2 options for your ad. So there's sponsored products and there are product display ads. So sponsored products are like ads that you use keywords to target. And so I guess first I should explain kind of like what these ads are. So if you go to any book page on Amazon that's like actually selling copies, and just scroll down the page, you'll see a section that says customers who bought this item also bought. And that's like, that's like where Amazon uses data science to find out, people who liked, the Time-Bound series also liked, the Chronos series or whatever, right? And then underneath that it says sponsored products related to this item. And that's where your ads show up. So that's where you're actually paying to get a listing on those book pages on Amazon for your sponsored product ads. And so with sponsored products, you can target essentially based on keywords. Right, so you can create an ad and that basically only targets people who type in, let's say, science fiction or fantasy novel or historical romance novel, right? So you can target these keywords that will then have your ad appear to those people searching for those kinds of books or related to those kinds of keywords, right? And then product display ads are a little bit different. So the product display ads, the way they work is you're targeting interests, right? So you can either target based on interest or by product. So interests are kind of just like, if you've seen Amazon categories, right? There's like health, fitness, and dieting. And then for science fiction, there's like women's fiction, poetry, literary fiction, genre fiction, right? So they're not very targeted, action and adventure. But interests are cool. So you can target by interest. So like Amazon will just automatically you just select, let's say, like action adventure, and Amazon will just automatically target your ad to people who have expressed interest in action adventure books on Amazon, right? The other way to target people with product display ads is by product. And this is usually not very useful, but it can be sometimes. So what you can do is, like, for example, like if you know for sure that like people who read your book would love, people who read Harry Potter would love your book, then you can actually go and advertise only to people who are looking at Harry Potter, right? So you can actually select that exact book and have your ad appear only on that one page on Amazon. So those are just kind of some of the ways you can target people with your ads on Amazon. And what we're seeing right now is that the vast majority of the time, the sponsored product ads are going to be like way more profitable than the product display ads. So like for sponsored product ads, we might have like a 5% Amazon cost of sales. And so Amazon cost of sales is like this weird thing. So essentially Amazon's, the way they report, they have kind of poor reporting for their ads. If you ever done like Facebook ads or Google AdWords, like this is not the same. It's not nearly as detailed. But their metric they give you is essentially like how many clicks you got, how many impressions you got, what was your cost per click, how much did you actually spend, and then what are your estimated total sales. And then they basically take your estimated total sales and divide that by your ad spend to give you your Amazon cost of sales. So for example, if you're selling an ebook, and you're at 70% royalties, if you have a 70% Amazon cost of sale, that means you're basically breaking even, right? So if the Amazon cost of sale is 70%, you're essentially breaking even. And so with sponsored product ads, we're seeing a lot of good books in the 5 to 15% range, right? So the Amazon cost of sale. So that means essentially, for every let's say dollar you spend, you're gonna get maybe like a 7x return. So you spend $1 and you're gonna get $7 in royalties. Now that's like a really good campaign, right? So not every campaign is gonna start out nearly that profitable, but we've seen lots of campaigns get that profitable and stay that profitable. And so in order to do that, you have to have a really good book. And so what I mean by that is it has to be, obviously well written, professionally edited, but it's really about the branding and the packaging, right? So the thing with, selling books on Amazon or any retailers, it's a retailer, right? So, we think of ourselves as an author, maybe a self-publisher, but really we're in the retail business, right? So if you think of how books were sold 20 years ago before the internet, you went into a store, a bookstore, which is like a retail establishment, and you had to go find like the area, like the science fiction bookshelf, the religious bookshelf, the history bookshelf, right? And you had to go and find your product. Like Amazon works the same way today, right? And so, if you go into a bookstore and you see a book with like a cover that's just ugly and, it's like this black and white picture or like something just horrible, you're not going to pick it up off the shelf, right? It's the same way on Amazon. So if you have a book with bad packaging, bad branding, you can spend as much money as you want on ads, you're not going to be profitable. And so a lot of times, like before we even go into like doing an ad campaign for our clients, the first thing we're going to do is get their branding really clear, right? And there's this whole process we go through to do that. But essentially, we're going to go to Amazon's website and we're going to find the best-selling books that are related to their book. So, if you're writing like a, Galactic Empire fantasy science fiction book, then we would go and see all the best-selling Galactic Empire science fiction books on Amazon, and we would take a look. And one of the first things we'll do is we'll take a look at all their book covers, right? We'll see, what are the similarities between all the book covers? What do the book covers look like from the books that are selling really, really well? And we'll start to kind of get an idea for what emotions are around that, right? Because the reason people buy books is emotion, right? The reason people buy anything is emotion. So we make purchasing decisions with emotion and we justify it with logic, right? And so, like, this is a great example of this is like movie posters, right? You go to the movie theater and you see the movie poster for like, the new James Bond thriller, and there's like a picture of a beautiful woman with like a gun, and there's like explosions in the background, and there's a helicopter on fire, right? Like that's, you can tell immediately just by looking at the poster that it's like an action thriller, right? Because it's branded, it's got that emotion around it. And so your book cover has to do the same thing, right? So if you have an action adventure thriller novel and the book cover, it's like pink and it's got, fancy italicized font that's hard to read, and there's a picture of a scantily clad woman. It looks like a romance novel. It doesn't look like an action adventure thriller, right? So you want to make sure that your book is really branded for your market. And so one of the ways you can do that is by researching, books on Amazon, and checking out what their book covers look like, because that's going to give you a good idea of, okay, what is the emotion the cover designer is communicating through this book cover, right? And then the other things we will have our clients do, and that we'll do for them, is read all the reviews of these top books on Amazon. So you want to read the positive reviews and the negative reviews and take notes. What do readers love about these books and what do they hate about these books? And you'll get a feeling for, what are the emotions your readers are having? What is getting them interested in these books? What is getting them disinterested in these books? And that'll help you figure out your brand as well. So sorry for the long digression, but it's really, really important that you get like the branding right, because otherwise it's almost impossible to have a profitable ad campaign if you don't have good branding, right? So back to the ads. The sponsored product ads have been performing the best. Product display, not so much. But we have had some product display ads do really, really well. So you kind of have to get creative with them. So again, you can target either interests on Amazon, which is good to test. So I think if you have a good budget, so if you have like, let's say a $250 budget, I would definitely test every type of ad, because you don't know what's going to work until you actually test it. And you can test with a very small budget. It doesn't require a huge investment. And you can set, you can set limits in the Amazon ad platform to how much you want to spend. So for sponsored products ads, it's like a daily budget. And for product display ads, it's an overall budget for the campaign. So the minimum overall budget for a campaign is $100, but you can always cancel it early. And in my experience, it usually takes several weeks for them to spend $100 on a campaign. So it's not like they're going to spend $100 in a day for you. That has never happened so far in my experience. So that's kind of the basics of it. Some good things to do in terms of keyword targeting is obviously you want to target like keywords related to your book. So, if you're doing an alien invasion novel, you type in words around alien invasion novel and, fantasy alien novel, right? Just think of every kind of keyword combination that a reader could possibly type in to find a book like yours. But other things that you can do as well beyond that is you can go and you can find the best-selling books in your niche or subgenre on Amazon, and then you can actually target the keywords for those authors, right? So, if Risa Walker from the Timebound series, if you've got a book related to that, you can target that keyword. So when people type in Risa Walker, they'll see on the bottom of her books, sponsored products related to this item, and they'll see your book right there, right? So if people reading that book or reading that author will be interested in your book, you can target those keywords as well. So that's kind of the basics of how you get started with it. And so the way that you become successful with ads is that you try as much as you can. You just test out everything, like test out all these wacky ideas, and in a structured way. Right. And then check back, 5 days later, check back. So what I do is I check back like every week. So like every Sunday, I'll check back on my campaign and see how that week went. And because the thing with Amazon ads is it's not like Facebook ads where you can literally spend on Facebook, like you can spend $100,000 in a week easily. And obviously you can set limits in your campaign, but like there's no way you can spend that much money on Amazon. Like they just won't let you spend more than we've never had anything go over like $50 a day for a single campaign. So you can't spend that much money on Amazon because they won't let you. But the cool thing is like it's super targeted traffic, right? So when you're targeting a keyword for, historical romance novel, like those people are interested in your book because they've either typed that keyword in or they're looking at a book that has that keyword in it, right? So it's kind of like the best, most targeted ad campaign you can possibly get in that sense because, it's Amazon telling you, yes, these customers are interested in what you said they're interested in and what you're targeting them for. So that's kind of the basics of how to get started with it.
All right, cool. You got a lot of good information in there. I think you made a really good point about probably for this to work, you really do need an awesome cover just because your book has to look more appealing than the book on the page that the people landed on to start with, because that's where most of these are showing up is on another book's page. So that's a good point. And I like your idea about looking at reviews of other books kind of similar to yours to get what people are reading for, the emotion. That's cool because I know when I go sit down and write the little ad blurb, 200 characters or whatever they give you, I never know what to write. I'm like, it's a book, and
Yeah,
but
exactly.
that's I think that's a good idea to try to appeal to people's emotions and figure out what they are looking for in your specific genre.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the easiest way to how do you write a good blurb? You can go read the top 100 blurbs from the top 100 books in your market and you can get an idea. Like you can tell right away, oh, this is a really good blurb and this blurb is terrible, right? So, model the one that's really good, and don't model the things that turn you off as a reader, right? That don't draw you in.
Right. And do you feel that for people that maybe aren't specifically in a target category, that like write cross genre stuff, or they've kind of written the story they want to write, and then they realize, it's kind of hard to market because it doesn't fit in a tidy category. Do you think Amazon ads could be useful for them too?
Absolutely. That's such a great question, right? So that's the cool thing about indie publishing is like you're no longer stuck in this little genre box where you have to write an 80,000 word fantasy and it has to have these characteristics of the storyline. Like you can do whatever you want. It's so cool. And so Amazon gets that. Like Amazon is constantly adding new categories for new genres that indie authors are just kind of creating on the fly. So that's awesome, right? So there's no issue with that whatsoever. Like there's nothing holding you back from writing a cross-genre book, right? And we're actually about to publish about a handful of cross-genre books. And so I think though the key with cross-genre is that even though you have, let's say, like 3 genres in one, you really want to focus on what is your core branding message for the book, right? So if, for example, we're working on a book, it's historical, it's like a historical romance, fantasy, paranormal, right? It's like bending all these genres together. But when we come up with the marketing campaign for the book, the cover design for the book, the message for the book, we're not saying it's a historical romance novel with paranormal suspense, right, elements, right? Like, because no one cares, right? So what you want to do is find what is like the core message of your book, right? And who would your core reader be? Right. So even though you might be a cross-genre book, would readers of historical novels or readers of fantasy or readers of romance or readers of action adventure, like which of those genres that your book includes, which of those is the most like your book, right? It's very similar with nonfiction, right? So if you're a nonfiction author and you're writing a book and you're talking about all these different topics or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like you have to have one element, one theme that you communicate with your book, because you can only communicate so much information in a book title and subtitle and in a brief blurb on Amazon, right? You can't tell the world, your entire manifesto on the meaning of life and an Amazon book description. It doesn't work that way. And so what I try to get our clients to do is get really clear on, how do you want to brand the book? Right. And so you can brand a cross-genre title as, any subgenre you want, or as a maybe a mix. You can do 2 at most, right? So you can say it's a historical fantasy or something like that. But I wouldn't get into the mixing several genres in your branding, because it gets really confusing for the reader, right? And there's this great quote in business that the confused mind always says no, right? So if you confuse your readers, they're not going to buy your book. Right. So you want to have this kind of crystal clear message. And the kind of the issue with that, though, is that you will find that you have to get that choice right. So the choice that you choose for your brand has to match what's in the book and has to match who your readers are. Because, if you say this book is is an urban thriller, and people read it and they're like, well, I mean, it's kind of an urban thriller, but that's really like, paranormal suspense is really what it is. And right, then you're marketing to urban thriller readers, but they're not feeling like it's delivering on your marketing promise. Does that make sense? And so you don't want to confuse readers, and you want to make sure that the brand that you finally decide on is true to the core of the story and true to the core of your message.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I feel like you do kind of have to pick the most appropriate genre in order to appeal to some readers, and then hopefully they'll like all the other elements you have in there after they pick up the book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, for sure.
Okay, so I've talked to a few people doing the Amazon ads, and I first tried it when it first came out, and then I've come back to it this last few months and had more success. I know early on I tried the keyword targeting that you were mentioning, targeting other authors that were very similar to what I was writing, and I found that I just couldn't spend any money. It wasn't until I just said, what, science fiction and fantasy is my target, did the broader interests, that I was able to move the dial. Do you feel that Have you run into other people with that problem? I know they're kind of evolving and changing, so it might be better now. What are
So when
your
you said
thoughts
you
on
couldn't
that?
spend money, do you mean that Amazon wouldn't let you, like Amazon wasn't actually giving you clicks? They weren't actually.
Well, I just wasn't getting enough impressions.
Right,
Like
exactly.
I put in $100 and I'm like, oh wow, I spent $2 in the last 3 weeks, because it was maybe I was doing too small
Right,
of keywords. And so even when I tried to make it a little broader, more authors that were more popular, it didn't seem to help that much. So yeah, now I'm just doing the whole genre basically, and that's working pretty well. It is like you said, it's not like Facebook where you can go spend a couple $1,000s like nothing. I
yeah,
think it still takes me the whole 8 weeks or something to go through like $300, or I don't remember what it is, but
right. Yeah, so that's the question with scaling, right? And so for keyword campaigns, when we have a book that's converting well, so in other words, like if we our Amazon cost of sales target is, let's say, 70%, because we only have an ebook, right? And so we know we're gonna get 70% royalties. We know we have to hit 70% to break even. And if we have a campaign at, let's say, 30%, like how do we scale that? Because we know we're making money on that. So how do we get more clicks, right? And so the way you do that with keywords is you just have to add more keywords, right? And so there's all kinds of cool tools. So you can like Google like a keyword tool, and we can link some in the show notes. So you can type in like one keyword, like let's say science fiction, and it'll give you like 800 variations on that keyword. And so you can create an entire campaign with just like 800 variations and test that out and see which of those keywords are getting you more traffic and which are profitable. So that's one way to do it. And the other way to do it is actually to target what you might think aren't relevant keywords, right? So you can actually target keywords, and this is more apparent for nonfiction. So like, for example, for nonfiction, we've got a book on memory. And so we're targeting ads to like every single book in business, every single book in education. Like we're targeting the random keywords that have nothing to do with memory. But because Amazon is actually like the ads are profitable, right? So we're just getting more traffic from Amazon, because at the end of the day, when you're advertising on Amazon, it's not the same as advertising on Facebook. So when you're advertising on Amazon, that person is one click away from purchasing your book. So they click your ad, they're one click away from purchasing your book, right? If they're on Amazon platform, they're a reader. So someone might be looking at a nonfiction book and click your ad and actually buy your novel. It's definitely possible, right? So think about, who is your ideal reader, right? And so maybe you're writing in a very tiny subgenre, and maybe you can expand your keywords to a more broad genre, right? So like you said, targeting all of the science fiction interest, right? Even though you have a subgenre within that, you can target a major genre. You can even target partner genres. And like you said, if you have a cross-genre book, you've got 3-4 genres mixed in your book, you can target each of those different genres with different campaigns and see which ones give you, see if you can actually get a profitable campaign out of that. And if you can scale it up with more and more keywords.
all right, sounds good. And yeah, I think when I did it, I targeted maybe like 15 authors that were kind of writing, and I was trying to do it for my pen name, which is science fiction romance, and it's a pretty small little niche. So there weren't that many authors I could think of to target. But yeah, I think going broader makes a lot more sense, and that's what I've seen with my other books too, that I've tried it with. It works better. But let me let Joe ask a few questions before we jump over to some email marketing stuff.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, one of the questions I've got is Amazon, like a lot of advertisers, let you, I think, bid how much you want to pay, and they give you, an average of what people are paying. How should you calibrate that sort of payment?
Yeah, good question. So you don't want to bid too much when you just start out, but at the same time, it's hard to spend a lot of money on Amazon. So it really depends on your budget. If you're like a super tight budget and you cannot afford to waste money, then what you want to do is start with really low bids. So like 10 cents per click is a pretty low bid. And so start with that and see, how much traffic you get, how many clicks you get. You're not going to get much traffic with the low bid like that, but you're more likely to earn a profit because you're spending less per click, right? So if you have, at least $250 to spend, you don't really need to worry about that. I would start at like 25 cents or so and just see and target a whole bunch of keywords and just see what keywords you can even get traffic for. Because if you have, let's say, 1,000 keywords, only 10% of them are actually going to get you traffic, right? The other 90%, you're going to get either no impressions or not enough impressions to actually make a difference, right? So that's how I would recommend going about it.
Now, I haven't looked too much into the, you're saying that there's not a tremendous amount of reporting that they give you. Do you have any, besides from basically, you know, scientifically trying some and then trying some others, is there ever any indication about what keywords are getting you most of your traffic?
Yeah, so that, I mean, they'll tell you in the reports how many impressions you're getting and how many clicks you're getting per keyword. So if you have a sponsored product campaign targeting specific keywords, you can click the campaign, and then in the keyword section, you can organize it by like how much your ad spend is. That's how we usually organize it. So we look at the keywords we spent the most money on. So we spent like $10 in the top keyword and $9 in the next one, and see based on, you know, because that's what really matters. Like, is how much because if you're not spending money on a keyword, you're not getting any traffic from it. So you can just see all the keywords that you've spent money on, which again is usually going to be maybe around 10%. And then you can organize it by that and see, okay, you know, you spent $10 on this keyword, did it make you a profit or not? And if it didn't make you a profit, is it close, right? So you might have a keyword that you spent $10 on and you had, let's say, $10 in sales. So you lost a little bit of money on that. But the thing with ads is like, okay, well, what if you sold one more book? Well, then you would have made a profit, right? So like there's that margin of error there. And so I don't like to cut off campaigns too soon. I think that's a lot of people will do that. They'll say like, oh, well, I spent $5 and I only made $5 in sales, so I lost money. But yeah, but if you made one more sale, you would have made a profit. So I like to let those ads run a little bit longer until I've gotten at least like 100 clicks minimum. And after that, I'll start to tell, okay, well, yeah, I'm getting lots of clicks for this, but it's not really profitable enough, so we're going to cut that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's also kind of funny that a keyword that gets you traffic might not be profitable. Like, it's odd that it can break down that far, where some keywords will direct people to your page but not generate book sales, and others will.
Right.
All right. Are there some types of books that are better suited to ads than others, like series starters?
So yeah, I mean, series starters are definitely great, right? Because the idea with that is that you're going to make more money, in the sense that you have, let's say you have 7 books in a series. Well, if they buy book 1, you know, a certain percentage of those people are going to buy book 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and so on, right? So you can't really measure that. Like with Amazon's reporting won't measure that for you. But if I had, you know, let's say a series of 7 books, and I was running an ad campaign to book 1 in that series, you know, I personally would be willing to spend like twice as much, right? So if my Amazon cost of sales was like 140%, I would be okay with that, right? I would watch it carefully. I would try to improve the numbers, but I would be okay with that because, you know, if you've got good books and you know lots of readers who buy the first book are going to buy the rest of your books, you're going to make that money up on the back end. And so yeah, I mean, the ad campaign and your strategy will vary from book to book. If you only have a single book, you know, like if you're an author with just one book, if that ad campaign is not profitable, you're never going to make a profit, right? So you have to make a profit right away. Whereas with like a series starter, you don't necessarily have to make a profit right away because you make a profit on the back end.
Yeah, it's true. And would you say, like, is it better to focus your ads on your most established and most successful books, or would you use ads to try to establish a book?
So, well, actually both. So for established books, are generally you're going to get, like, that's when we've seen like the ad cost is just so low, like, well, you know, 5% Amazon cost of sales, which is like, you know, 14x return on investment. I mean, it's huge, right? Like there's almost nowhere else you can get that kind of return on investment. But that's almost always like established books, like they have 100+ reviews. They're already like selling really well, and we're just getting more traffic for them. But it's also great to start with a new book because it's targeted traffic, right? So like the common mistake a lot of new authors make is like, you know, you publish your new book and you don't have an audience yet. So you go ask all your friends and family and every author group on Facebook to buy your book. And then what happens is, you know, your alien invasion novel, Amazon says, hey, customers who bought this also bought, you know, How to Get Rich Overnight, right? And it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. And so what happens is Amazon starts promoting your book to readers who have no interest in your book. And then your clicks to conversion ratio goes like through the floor, and you get like that Amazon kiss of death where you just stop getting traffic from your book completely, right? Because Amazon said, hey, we tried to promote your book to readers who we thought were relevant, and none of them actually wanted to buy your book. So rather than doing that, you know, you should start with getting targeted readers to your book. Like Chris Fox talks a lot about this. start with getting targeted readers to your book page. And ads are a great way to do that. So if you don't have an audience yet, you don't have a fan base, you can just tap into Amazon's audience.
Yeah, it's a good plan. One more question, and then we have our missing host has got some questions we can ask. But can ads be helpful at any price point, or would you preferentially pair them with discounts?
So in my experience, actually discounts don't work well with ads. So like when we're doing like a Kindle countdown deal or something, we find that during that time period, the ads underperform. And I think it's just because the price point is so low, right? So if you drop a book from $4.99 to 99 cents, you got to sell, like, even if the Kindle countdown deal, you get the same percentage of royalties, you got to sell 5 times as many books. And there's not really any way, like that price drop isn't going to give you a 5x increase in sales. It's just not going to happen. So ads actually underperform when you do price discounts, in my experience. But what does really help the campaign dramatically is having paperback books and having audiobooks linked on the same book page, because then you're spending the same amount of money on traffic, on clicks. But once they click through to your book, if they click through to the Kindle version, they might then click through to the paperback and buy that, which generally speaking, in a lot of cases, you'll actually earn more in royalties from that or from the audiobook. And so it gives you more opportunities to make that sale, right? So if someone clicks through to your ad, they see you only have a Kindle version available and they only buy paperback books, then you miss that sale. But if you have that paperback available, you're making more money from the same traffic. So we've definitely found that books that have the paperback, the audiobook, and the ebook version available do a lot better with ads.
I think military folk would call that a force multiplier.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess one other like sort of extension of that question, but like, what about books that are perma-free? Are they well paired with ads or not?
Honestly, I don't know about that. I'm not even sure if it's possible to promote those products. I mean, I assume that it is, but I've actually never done an ad campaign for a free book. But that's a good idea. I'll have to test that out, or have someone in the audience test that out and let us know.
Chances are I'm going to be testing that out pretty soon. So
yeah,
perhaps in a future episode we'll be talking about it. All right. I'm going to go on to Jeff's questions now. As mentioned earlier, Amazon no longer requires you to be exclusive to use this ad system, but do you think that Kindle Unlimited authors have an advantage to using the Amazon ads that others don't?
I mean, Kindle Unlimited authors always have an advantage because, first of all, you're going to convert more readers, right? In the sense that, and I say an advantage, I mean an advantage on the Amazon ecosystem, right? So I think they have an advantage overall in the whole economy, but I think especially, like, I'm just talking like the Amazon ecosystem, right? So if you have someone come to your book page on Amazon and you are in Kindle Unlimited, that person knows they can read your book for free. So if they have any modicum of interest in your book, they're just going to click read for free and they're going to download it, right? If you're not in Kindle Unlimited, you don't have that same, like, you're not going to get those bargain shoppers who are in Kindle Unlimited, right? Or you're not going to get as many of them. So in that sense, you have an advantage, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really that big of a deal. I think, like, I've definitely know authors who are using Kindle ads right now, Amazon Marketing Services ads, and doing really well, even though they're not in KDP Select. So, it's just, you're not really going to know how well it's going to go for you until you test it out.
Yep, that's usually the way it works, unfortunately. His other question actually was already answered, so I'm going to hand you back to Lindsay. We'll start talking about email.
All right. Well, one more question I thought of. This is going to be the Amazon Ads Hour, but we've never talked about it on the show before, so that's why we're pumping you, Tom. Just what are your thoughts on, should you run your campaign continuously, go off and on, or just do it for like 8 weeks and then you're just not going to see the same returns?
I mean, they're still pretty new, so we've only been doing them for a couple months. So I have no idea, like, if they're going to be profitable the next year or 5 years, right? But my philosophy is that anytime you're spending money on an ad and you're earning a profit, so you spend $1 and you earn $2, it's like a no-brainer to me. Just I want to keep spending that money because I'm going to keep earning more money. It's kind of a no-brainer. But if your campaign is on that edge, like a lot of times, like Facebook ads, let's say you're breaking even or you're slightly losing money or slightly making money, like, you had like a tough choice to make. And so you have to kind of set those benchmarks for yourself. It's kind of like gambling, right? It's like, how much do you want to risk when you go play poker at the casino, right? You don't want to risk too much because yes, it's different because it's not gambling, right? Because it's a business, but there's a certain amount you can overspend and still make a profit as an author, and there's a certain amount if you overspend, you're throwing money down the toilet. And so you have to kind of have strict rules with yourself of, kind of look at it honestly. And so like if your book is like a series starter, so it's the first book in a series of 7, like I said, if it's like the Amazon cost of sales goes above 140%, I'd probably cut that off, right? But if it's at like 130, that's good. But if it's a standalone book, it's 130, you're losing money every day. Like you need to cut that off right now, right? And so I think it just boils down to, understanding, kind of trying to look at it as realistically as possible and figure out, okay, am I actually making money from this campaign? And look at not just how much you spent and how much you made from that one book, but look at your overall business, like your overall backlist of titles, how big your email list is and so forth, and try to figure out, okay, if I'm spending this much money to get this many sales, is that ultimately making me more money at the end of the day, or is that losing me money, right? And some authors will be happy to lose a little bit of money, right? Some authors will be happy, like if their Amazon cost of sales is like 80%. And so they're losing a little bit of money, but they know they're building their email list. They're in it for the long term. It's an investment in their long-term success. Then maybe it makes sense to do that, right? But you have to kind of go into it like eyes wide open and not trick yourself into thinking, well, if I just keep spending money, eventually I'll be successful, because it's not how it works.
All right, good. Yeah, I think it's worth looking at those before you decide if you want to re-up your campaign, because I found just with my stuff that, like the first 3 months or so I ran it, it was a lot more clicks, a lot more better return. And then I feel like maybe people get ad fatigue. They're always seeing the same ads in the sci-fi category or whatever. So I might give it a break for a while. But all right, let's talk email stuff. I figure everybody that's listening to the show probably knows by now they should have a mailing list. But I feel like a lot of us always think we should be doing more with our mailing lists. What are some of the kind of the best practices that you would recommend?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say, in the internet marketing world, which is kind of where email marketing really took off, like people selling like, how to make money online, all this stuff, right? Like the hardcore internet marketing philosophy is that you should email your list every single day, right? And the reason behind that is that if you email your list every single day, and at least, once or twice a week, you're asking them to buy something, you're going to get a good amount of people buying from you, right? Because you're just asking them to buy more often. Now, it doesn't really apply to authors directly, because if you only have one book, there's only so many times you can ask your email list to buy your book, right? Like you have to go out and write another book before you can promote it to your list, right? Because you can't just say buy the same thing over and over again, right? But what that has kind of taught me, and related to that is, some of the best business advice I ever got was, like, if you want to make more money on your website, add more buy buttons, right? And it's such a simple advice. It almost sounds corny, like stupid, but when I looked at my website years ago and I compared it to people in my industry who I knew were earning millions of dollars, every single time they had more buy buttons on their website. They had more places for people to sign up for their email list. Right? They just had more opportunities for the visitor to connect with them on a deeper level. And that's really what email is about. It's about connecting with your audience, right? And so that's the big mistake people make, is that we think that, oh, I'm annoying my audience, right? I'm annoying people with too many emails or too many updates or asking them to buy too much. And the truth is you can't, right? So if you have a raving fan reader, an absolute raving fan who absolutely loves you and loves everything you do, and you accidentally send them the same email 3 times in a row asking them to buy their book, they're not going to unsubscribe from your list, right? They're just not. They love you. They're going to say, hey, Lindsay, I noticed you sent me the same email 3 times. I'm guessing there's some kind of mistake. Right? They want to help you succeed, right? And so that's what you have to realize, like, your audience wants you to succeed. They want you to do well. They want you to be successful. They want to help share your message. And so if you're neglecting them by not sending them emails, or you're worrying about, oh, what should I send them? You're really shooting yourself in the foot. And so that's my kind of lesson in my experience of doing email marketing for years and years and years, is you really can't send too much. What you don't want to do is just send the same thing over and over again. So you don't want to ask them to buy the same book like every week, week after week after week, because they're going to get burned out on that. But you can always promote new products, right? So a great thing you can do with your email list is you can find other writers in your subgenre, and you can all band together and say, hey, if you promote my books to your list, I'll promote your books to my list. And that's a win-win for everybody, because anyone who reads, historical romance novels, like, they're just waiting for the next one to come out. They're waiting for a new historical romance novel. They're looking for new authors all the time. So if you can just tell them, hey guys, I'm working on my next book, but in the meantime, here's another really good book by a really good author in the same space. You might be interested in this one. It's a win-win for everyone, right? So you're gonna help support the other author, and they're gonna help support you, and it's gonna help support your audience, because your audience has to spend less time trying to find the next book on Amazon. I don't know if you're like me, but like I love reading books. And one of the things I hate to do is go to Amazon.com and look at all the bestseller lists and try to find a book that's going to be interesting to me. It's not fun for me to do that. Whereas if someone, in one of my mastermind groups says, hey, Tom, you need to go buy this book on marketing, it's amazing, I'm going to go buy that book right away, right? They made it easy for me by giving me that recommendation. And so that's one way to look at yourself as an email marketer, as an author, as an authority, is you're a resource for your subscriber. And so as a good, valuable resource for your subscriber, you should be giving them as much advice and content and information as you can, without feeling like, it's your full-time job to send emails every single day, because you don't have to send them every single day. But that's kind of my philosophy on it, is that you really can't send too much.
Yeah, I think that's really hard for us authors to wrap our heads around that idea, because we are, so many of us are introverts, and we don't want to be bugged, and we know we get annoyed when we get a lot of email, because that's just how we are. But
yeah, it's so true. So it's the great point that you bring up, because like, you are not your audience. This is one of the best marketing lessons I ever learned. Is like, you are not your reader, you are not your audience, you are not your customer. You are similar to them, but you are not exactly them, right? And so your average reader, your average customer is probably very unlike you in that regard, right? So think about, like, if you were on the email list of, like, let's say J.K. Rowling, right? I don't even think she has one, but let's just imagine she had an email list for authors, and she was sharing her secrets to success, right, in this, private email campaign, right? Like, you would open every email from J.K. Rowling, right? You would read everything, you would devour it. If she sent you an email at 4 a.m. and you happen to be on the toilet checking your Twitter and you saw the email pop up, you'd be like, I'm gonna read that right now. I'm not going to bed until I read this, right? So that's how your raving fans feel about your work, right? So you have to kind of put yourself in that situation and say, well, if this is how much my fans love me and care about what I have to say, I should probably share more of myself with them, because it's going to help them, right? It's going to help improve their life.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when I've had to learn is that I'm not my audience, and now I try to target things or test things, whether it's a blurb or a cover or something, and ask what they think is the most appealing, because it's often not what I think is the most appealing.
Right.
And
that's a great point.
I have found that when I've emailed my list, like, again a week later after a release, I'll change it up. I'll say something like, hey, thanks, we got to 50 reviews, and this is still on sale for 99 cents for a few more days if you missed, it last time. I will always get people that either didn't see the first email or, just didn't have time to think about it then. I'll always still get sales on that second email. So I think it's worth, even if we're not going to email every day, I think it's worth doing like 2 emails for sure whenever you have a new release.
Absolutely, for sure. So the way we do promotions for email is we send like the first email promotion to everyone on that list, right? And then pretty much every autoresponder will allow you to send to unopens. So you can create a segment of your subscribers who did not open the first email, and you can send them another email. And you can do that a third time too. So the second email, which you only send to people who didn't open the first email, so they never read it, you can send another segment of the people who didn't read the second email and send it again. So you're not sending the same message to the same people who read it already. You're sending to the people who didn't open the first emails, right? And then what you can do is at the end, like you said, do that second email to your whole list and saying like, hey, the Kindle Countdown deal is closing tomorrow at, midnight Pacific. Grab it while you can, right? And that is kind of the least annoying way to promote to your audience, but still get the most sales and the most exposure, because you're segmenting your readers in a way that is more just makes more sense, really.
Definitely. Now, what do you have your authors doing as far as somebody comes to my website, they sign up on the form, they get they click to verify. What do you think should be in that first email, Steve?
That's a good question. So I think for novelists, it's a little bit different. You have to figure out like who is your target reader and what do they really want, right? Like what do they really want? Okay. Because, for a lot of people, it's different. and just different authors have different messages. So like there are some novelists who, you know, maybe they're writing in a genre, but they don't really care about the genre. They care about the message they have. Like they have a set of ideals or a philosophy they're trying to communicate through their novel, right? And so their audience and their message is very different than, you know, a hardcore military science fiction writer where like they really just care about the genre, they care about the story, they care about the fun, the adventure, right? So you have to get clear on that. Again, it's like getting clear on like what is your brand, who is your customer, what do they want? And then once you're clear on that, then send them what's most valuable to them. Right. So if they're a hardcore military science fiction reader, then you should send them a free sample of a book or a free short story or something that they're really going to enjoy in that first email. And then just also share a little bit about yourself. Right. So like connect with them because they're your fan now. They signed up, they paid money to buy your book. Then they read your entire book. They read your whole book. Can you believe that? And then after they read your whole book, at the end of your book, they said, hey, I like this book so much. I want to be on your email list, Lindsay, right? So they've committed so much to it that you kind of owe it to them to give them something, right? And so one of the great ways to give, you know, in any relationship is just to be vulnerable, like just to share yourself. Like, who are you? Like, why did you know, you can share your story. Like, my story, like, you know, I was, you know, a broke college student and I didn't want to go to Wall Street and be an investment banker. I wanted a better life for myself. So I wrote a book about, you know, what I thought it meant to be successful. Like, just share openly and vulnerably about your story, why you became an author, why you're writing, and then link to, you know, the free short story or whatever you're giving for your readers. And that's it. Right. And so you're connecting with them on an emotional level, you're sharing your story and you're giving them what you promised. That's like, you know, there's nothing classier than that. Right? You've delivered on what you promised, you've over-delivered, and you've been vulnerable and been honest with them and shared your story. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds like good advice. And I know a lot of us have heard and done like giving away a free prequel or even a book or something. But it's a good point that people want to hear from you and hear about you. Like, I can't tell you how many times somebody's emailed me and I'm emailing them back and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you wrote me back. You know, we feel like we all have that imposter syndrome. You know, we're nobody special. Nobody's going to care what we have to say, but it's not true. You know, it's especially if they've read your books, they do want to hear from you and just in a conversational way, and they enjoy those updates, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I try to look at everything in business. It's like, you know, the more you give, the more you receive. I mean, that's just how it works. And you know, I think especially as an artist, as an author, you know, you're sharing ideas and you're sharing stories. Like it's kind of a weird job, right? Like your job is to share stories with people, right? And so, I mean, that's essentially what you should do in your emails is share stories from your life. You know, you can talk about, you know, last week we went on vacation, or this week we're having Thanksgiving with the family, and, you know, we're going to talk about politics and it's going to be terrible, but, you know, and then you have some kind of like beginning, middle, end of your story that's entertaining and helps them connect with who you are and what you're going through in your life. And that's how you build relationships, right? Think of your audience like friends. They're your friends. And so when you send an email to your audience, you're sending a list to your best friends in the world, and you're telling them about what's going on in your life. And it could have nothing to do with writing. It could have nothing to do with your genre, but they're going to care because they're your fans.
All right, very true. Let me hand you to Joe/Jeff this week. He's being two people, and to ask a few more questions on marketing email.
Yep. All right. My first question is, actually was, is it better to send newsletters regularly or only when you have specific updates? But it seems like regularly is better based upon your earlier answers. So,
yeah,
my actual first question is, how many topics per email? Like, I typically do a 2-story email where like there's the first one is what I'm trying to push at the moment, and the second one is, you know, maybe you missed it or it doesn't, you know, other things like that. Like, how much information should an email have?
That's a really good question. So this one also depends on your frequency, right? So I think the strategy of saying like, oh, hey, this is my new book out, and then like, right. And so like in the body of your email, you have that one concept of, you know, my new book is out. Here's what it's about. You can buy it here at a deal. And then maybe like a PS, which is like, oh, hey, like my last book, in case you missed it, here it is. That's a good idea every once in a while, but you don't want to do that like in every single email, because I like to mix things up. So And some emails, you're going to have like one idea, that's it. You're just having that one idea, and it's going to be, maybe just really short. And then other emails can be much, much longer and much more thorough, much more detailed. And so I like to mix them up from that standpoint, so to keep readers like interested, right? So they never know when they get an email from Joe if it's going to be like a 1-sentence email like, hey, what did you think about my last novel? Or if it's going to be like, a 10-page email about, your struggles of becoming an author, or whatever it is, right? Whatever you want to share with your audience. I like to do that because it's more real, right? Like if you're a writer, some days you're going to write 100 words and some days you're going to write 10,000 words. That's what it's like to be a writer, And so I think that's what your email should be like. I think I've seen some email newsletters where it's like, it's the same thing every single time. And it is so boring to me. I don't connect with those people in the same way, because it seems like, did a robot write this message? Because it seems just like the last email. It sounds just like you know what I mean? It's like, it's very similar to writing a story, right? You want some sentences that are short and some sentences that are really long. And you want, some scenes that are really quick and fast and punchy, and other scenes that are slow and drawn out and romantic and dramatic and whatever, right? So I think, email should be the same way. Again, like email is really just communicating with people. It's just sharing stories. And so, mix it up, like share different kinds of stories to have a different impact and connect with your audience on different kind of levels.
Yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense, and it's something I hadn't really considered, again, because I tend to separate the marketing, like the business end, from the storytelling end. I had a funny thing happen with, I tried to do a one-story email recently, and basically I just forgot to remove the second one from the previous email. And it had the bizarre effect of lots of people who apparently didn't even notice it was on the first email answering the questions I asked there as though they were new. So, like, what are your feelings on repetition within emails? Like, should you rephrase, or should you never repeat?
I think a little bit of repetition is good, right? Like, you have to remind people, because people are busy, so some days people are going to read your email and they're going to read every single word, and other days they're going to read your email and get distracted halfway through, and they're going to, delete it or archive it or whatever, and they're not going to read the whole thing. So I think a little bit of repetition is good. You just don't want to beat people over the head with the same thing again and again and again. But I think you should definitely repeat. Like, if you're not repeating at all, then you're making a mistake, right? Like if you're just emailing to your list once with, I've had a new book out, here it is, and you send that one email, that's it. You're going to get maybe like 30% of the sales that you could potentially get, right? If you had done the emails to the unopens and then follow-up emails and, an email at the end of the promotion, right? So some repetition is good. You just don't want to overdo it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I've noticed I typically get 1 or 2 unsubscribes after just about every email. Is there a point at which you should be concerned about the number of unsubscribes you're getting?
No, I mean, that's good. So the more unsubscribes you get when you send an email, the more successful you are. That's just how it works. It's a numbers game, right? So, now that I have a list of like 30,000 people, I don't know, I get like dozens of unsubscribes every time I send an email. It's kind of weird. It's like, man, dozens of people don't like me today. But then I look and I got like, 60 new subscribers. So, it's like, if, as long as you're growing, you're on the upswing, I think it's good. So don't focus on the negative. Like it's just a part of business. It's a natural cycle. Some people are going to subscribe to your list and some people are going to unsubscribe. So I have like 30,000 active subscribers now, but in the past 10 years, I've probably had 60 or somewhere between 60 and 90,000 people sign up, right? So like more than half of the people who sign up for my list are gone, right? And that's just normal. That's what's going to happen over time, right? And I think you have to get used to that as an entrepreneur, as an author, as an artist. Like, you're going to get bad reviews and you're going to people unsubscribe. It's just the way the world works. That there's nothing personal about it, right? I mean, think about your own life. Like, I mean, how many newsletters have you joined and then unsubscribed from? Because I know I've unsubscribed from like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of email lists, right? So it's nothing personal at all.
That was not the answer I was expecting. Well, but it does make sense, because it's all volume. As long as you're swinging net positive, it doesn't. The unsubscribe shouldn't bother you too much.
Yeah. So I mean, if you do see like a huge spike, right? So it's hard to tell. So like, let's say your average is like 1 and you get like 25. That's definitely a warning sign, right? And it's usually because you did something that really turned people off. Like if you use like curse words, or if you like came out really hard and supported like one political candidate and like half of your audience was like split on that candidate, right? Like those kinds of things can turn people off, and they'll be like, oh, I'm unsubscribing now, right? But if you're being vulnerable, honest with people, and you're just sharing your message, like you're not going to turn a huge segment of your audience off. And if you do, you'll know, because not just what you have unsubscribed, people will reply back to you and be like, hey, you're a jerk because you did this. And then you'll learn from that experience, and then, try not to do it again in the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, we got some Jeff questions now. If you're an author with a blog, would you recommend the first thing that a visitor sees when they get to your page be a pop-up asking them to subscribe? Like, should you be pushy or non-pushy with your sign-up requests?
So I use SumoMe by AppSumo, and it's a great app. I think it's like 20. Well, you can start with the free version, which is great, and it has a pop-up, and you can put it on a time delay. So most of our pop-ups come like 15 seconds after they've been on the site. So it doesn't get people like as soon. I hate if I like come on a site and they immediately pop up before I even see, like before like the even page loads. I can't stand that. So we do 15 seconds usually before the pop-up, and that seems to work really well. And because so there's a couple things with the website. So like there's like your bounce rate, right? So let's say someone types into Google, they find your webpage, they click on it. The bounce rate is like how many people like click out like immediately from your site, right? And so you don't want to pop up before someone clicks out, because then you're just like further annoying that person. They're gonna be like, I'm never going back to the site again, right? So you want people to have the opportunity to bounce off your site. And then when they're around for 15 seconds, they haven't bounced. It's not a bounce. They're staying around on your site. So that's when you like invite them. The pop-up comes and says, hey, like if you want even more, sign up for the newsletter. So that's kind of the philosophy behind that.
Yeah, I'd often wondered what the time delay, what was the thinking behind it. But I used to pay a lot of attention to web traffic, and it makes a lot of sense to try to only show it to somebody who's actually interested in your site.
Absolutely, and you can also set it so that like if someone already opted in, they don't see the pop-up. And there's other settings too. So like you won't show the pop-up to the same person, unless it's been like more than a week or more than a month or something, right? So they're not getting like every time they load your website is popping up. That can be really annoying for people too. So there's all kinds of cool settings with technology nowadays where you can customize it so it still gets you results, but it's not super annoying.
Yep. Hooray for cookies on that, I suppose.
Yeah, totally.
And if you have multiple genres, would you recommend combining all of your readers into one newsletter, or should you separate out into separate newsletters?
Absolutely do different newsletters, because it's easy, right? It's super easy in any autoresponder, you can segment with different lists. And then when you send your email, you can just be like, okay, I want to send it to these two lists. So I want to send it to my sci-fi and my romance list, but not my action adventure list, right? And you can segment each time you send an email. And the reason you want to do that right from the beginning is just because it's easier to manage in the long term, right? So, and you can segment your audience. And so you know exactly what they'll be interested in, and you're going to get better click-through rates, you can get better open rates, you're going to get better engagement with your audience. And the other thing is like you don't really know at the end of the day what's going to be successful. So maybe you're writing in 3 genres now, and then you find like, hey, your military sci-fi is like, by far the most popular for your book. So you just then like, 3 years from now, you're no longer writing these other genres, you're only writing in that one genre. And then you can just focus on that one list, and then invite other people on the other list to say, hey, like I'm no longer writing this genre, but you can come check out my other lit books by signing up for this list, right? So segmenting your audience is a really good idea, and it's so easy today. There's like no reason not to.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've really underutilized with my with news. There's a lot of options for newsletters that I have not really taken too much advantage of, and I think that might be number 1 for me.
Yeah. How many genres are you in?
I'm in sci-fi and fantasy mostly, but I mean, like that includes a steampunk, and then there's a couple of weird one-offs that I don't even know how to classify, but
right,
primarily sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah, so you can just set up a new list for each different little subgenre you have. And then at the back of your book, like when you ask them like, hey, sign up for the list here to get more, you just have a list to a different opt-in form or opt-in page where they go onto that targeted list for that audience.
All right, good to know. I might have to do some manicuring of my newsletter soon. But I'm going to hand you back off to Lindsay now for just a little bit more.
All right. Yeah, I actually started a second list for my sci-fi series when I started it, and it's I'm really glad I did it, both because those people, a lot of them are Amazon KU people, because that was my first series that I put into KU, and I didn't want to piss off all the non-Amazon people that are on my fantasy list by always saying, like, "Look, here's a new release that's in KU only." So I agree, definitely, if you're doing different genres, and it makes it easy to decide what your freebie is going to be to give away. Where, if people came for your sci-fi, you don't want to, like, here's my dragon story, you'll love
Right,
it.
totally. Yeah, you want everything like for the customer experience to be like to match with your brand, right? And match with what the value that you're offering.
Definitely. And we're already on the hour here. Are you okay with a few more questions on the social media stuff? Is it
Sure.
surfing time in Hawaii yet? I don't know.
It's late here, but yeah,
All right.
time for dinner.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just curious, we were going to talk about social media, and then, before we hit record, you said you actually don't usually push that on people unless they're already interested in it. Could you just talk about kind of what your philosophy is and what you're recommending to authors in that area?
Yeah, so I think, when it comes to marketing, there are so many ways to market, your platform as an author and your books, right? I mean, there's literally thousands or millions of different marketing opportunities, right? And so I know authors who have done, incredibly well, like almost exclusively on Twitter, almost exclusively on Facebook, or almost exclusively on Pinterest, or different YouTube and different networks, right? And so I think the key is to focus on what you're good at, because all marketing that's successful long term is long-term marketing, right? So like Coca-Cola, like why does Coca-Cola still have ads? They've been advertising for over 100 years and they're still running ads, right? Why? Because it works. Because they know if they keep running ads, they're going to keep making more and more money, right? That's how businesses work. That's how marketing works, right? And so if you want to be successful with your marketing, it has to be something you're going to commit to long term. So if you're just going to tweet for the next 3 months and be the most amazing Twitter author and personality for 3 months and then quit because you can't stand Twitter and you hated it and you only did it because you thought you would make more money from it, then that's not a good marketing strategy for your personality, for your skill set, and for your strengths. And so what we work with new clients at TCK Publishing, like the first thing we do when it comes to marketing, besides getting their brand ready, is like, okay, Lindsay, like, what are your strengths? Like, what are you really good at? Like, what do you love to do when it comes to marketing, right? And so some people, like, they just love to write, and they could write blog posts and guest articles, and they could write for Huffington Post and all these other online magazines and resources and blogs and places, and that's what they love to do. And so that for them doesn't feel like work. They could just do it every day, and they love doing that. And so that could be a great marketing strategy, right? But it has to fit your skill set. And other people just love to speak. Like I'm a speaker. I'm a talker. I don't know if you guys can tell, but like I love podcast interviews. So I've done like 100 podcast interviews in the past, 5 months or so. I love it. Like it's just so much fun because I love to speak. And I live in Hawaii. And I don't like to travel as much anymore. So I don't go to like writers' conferences and seminars and to speak as much anymore. So I just get on podcasts and I get on YouTube and I speak that way, right? So I'm using my strength to reach my audience. And that's what you want to do, is like match your skill set with the marketing channels that you want to use, right? So if you're a speaker, you want to be doing things like podcast and radio, or maybe TV, video, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, right? Things like that use that skill set to get your message out to more people. But I think when people say, oh, hey, you have to have a Facebook page and you have to do it this way, and every day you have to post 5 times, it's like, that doesn't make sense if it doesn't match your audience, if it doesn't match your skill set, because if you're not going to be consistent with it long term, you're not going to be successful long term.
All right. I think there are some people that will be encouraged by that get tired of, that don't like Facebook or don't like, I know a lot of authors don't get Twitter. Jeff, our co-host, who's in MIA tonight, he's still not on Twitter. He's not going to get on Twitter. But are there any?
Focus on what you're good at.
Have you found that any authors that are more of the verbal types and like the talking YouTube podcasts, are you finding that can be effective for selling fiction?
It can, but like everything, it's kind of, it's a long-term game, right? So you can't just do it for like 3 months and expect to get rich. It's just not how it works. You have to build a real fan base. So if you're going to be YouTubing, for example, you either have to view it as like, okay, this is something I just do, and if it makes me money, that's great. Or you have to treat it like a real business, right? And you have to say, hey, I'm going to create a real community around my YouTube channel, and I'm going to connect with my audience. And this is my strategy for doing it. And this is my content schedule. I'm going to have, 5 videos a week or 1 video a week or whatever it is, and really focus on it, treat it like a business, right? Because every community is a little bit different. So, I mean, there are YouTubers who, make like 6 figures or millions of dollars just from ads, right? And so if you're an author, you're an artist, you're a creative person, maybe you want to make fun, crazy videos for your audience on YouTube. But there's all kinds of ways to do it. You don't have to follow any one set formula, but you have to be consistent, because no one wants to follow someone who's not consistent, right? Like if someone goes to your channel and they're like, oh, this person hasn't posted a new video in 3 years, they're not going to subscribe. They're not going to check you out. They're not going to buy your book, right? But if you're posting new content regularly and it's cool and it's fun and it speaks to your audience, they are going to stay connected with you, right? It's the same thing with like an email list. I mean, if you don't send someone an email for 6 months, the next time you send them an email, your open rates are going to be so low. Like people are going to be like, who the heck is Joe? I haven't heard from Joe in 6 months. I don't even know who this guy is anymore. I don't remember reading his book. That was a year ago, right? And so you have to be consistent with anything you do.
Yeah, and that's probably a good reason to maybe just pick 1 or 2 things that really interest you, because, I think blogging is going to be the same way. And, a lot of these things, it does take time to build up subscribers and start getting some views on YouTube if that's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, you really got to stay focused on just a few core things.
All right. Well, is there anything I don't know, that we haven't talked about, an interesting marketing thing that some of your authors are maybe doing and that's actually worked well for them?
There's all kinds of cool stuff. I think the cool stuff with fiction that I don't see very many people doing, which they should be doing, is like merchandise, right? So there's all kinds of websites where you can, very similar to Kindle, like it's free. Like you can just upload like a design for t-shirts and like teespring.com and hoodies and hats and you can design it and like either just do the designs yourself or pay someone like $5 or whatever however much it costs for design, and then you don't have any inventory costs. It's like print on demand, just like a book is, and you can sell merchandise, right? You can sell pens and lighters and whatever kind of crazy stuff you want. I've seen a lot of or some like creative novelists do things like game, like playing cards, almost like those fairy cards, or I don't know, what I'm talking about, like it's like a deck of cards and they're like really
I've seen, I think I might have even seen the author who was doing that. Somebody had like a set of like almost like Magic the Gathering or something like that, but
yeah, very similar to that, right? Yeah. So there's all kinds of cool things you can do, right? Like if you look at Game of Thrones, right? Look at all the stuff they're doing. Like there are video games, there are apps, and it's called like transmedia, right? Which is like you take this book, which is like a book media, and you take it and create like every different platform to connect with your audience on a deeper level. And I don't think many self-published authors are taking advantage of that, but I think there's huge opportunity there, especially for things like merchandise, which costs you nothing or almost nothing to actually get it, because you don't have to have inventory anymore.
All right. On that note, I'm going to hand you to Joe for the last couple of questions, because he's actually done some of the merchandising stuff. So
cool.
I have, although I think I went a little bit higher ticket than most people do. So it's been cool to do it, though. I guess just a couple of things. Regardless of what you're doing, when you're interacting with fans, do you think it's better to build a rapport or like keep it business-like?
I think rapport, right? I mean, business-like is like so boring. Like who wants to get a memo from like a Fortune 500 CEO, right? It's like, It's like, shoot me, please. I don't want to read that. I think it's all about, business is really just about relationships. Like long-term success in business is about long-term relationships. And people like relationships with people that they can trust, people who are honest, people who they actually hear from on a regular basis, right? Like if you have a best friend, you don't hear from them in 5 years, they're probably not your best friend anymore, right? Because, like as time goes on, you just, it's natural. That's how human relationships work. And so I think rapport and trust is like the #1 ingredient for success. And, there's all kinds of ways to build that, but it's really about being consistent and being honest and being open with people. And if you're an artist or an author, like, keep writing new books, keep creating content, because that's what your audience really loves.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. And well, on the subject of consistency, the only other question I had was I see a lot of people like scheduling posts, queuing posts, and doing like sort of auto posts. And what are your feelings on maintaining consistency in that way?
Yeah, so for social media, I think it's good. I think it's smart to schedule stuff because, when you batch tasks, it's just more efficient. So it really depends on the person, right? So like I know some people who like are Twitter addicts and they love Twitter and like they market on Twitter. So like they always have their phone with them and they're always tweeting personally. But even they still schedule content, right? So because it just makes sense. Like if you can spend 1 hour, schedule the content for the month, if you compare that to every single day having to remind yourself and all the stress of saying, oh, did I tweet today or did I not tweet today, right? It's a waste of your energy. So I think it's smart to find as efficient a process as possible to really get the job done.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And before I'm going to hand you back to Lindsay to finish things up. But the reason Lindsay pitched it to me afterward is because this cabinet behind me is filled to the brim with various experiments in merchandise and artwork.
Cool.
So the cabinet of awesomeness is where.
Well, now you have lots of more email potentials to send to your audience, right? Because now you can say, hey, check out my news, this, check out that.
Yeah, you talk about print on demand. You can do print on demand figurines now and pendants. So fun stuff to experiment with if nobody else has tried it.
Yeah, and with like 3D printing coming online, I mean, pretty soon they'll be able to print like literally anything you want. You can make all kinds of cool creative stuff that no one else even has if you can design it.
Yep. It's a lot of fun. And again, behind that door is 2 3D printers. So I've been dipping my toes in that particular technique.
That's awesome.
But hand you off to Lindsay, and we're going to wrap things up.
All right, I kind of feel like you should have the lights going on your cabinet though while we wrap things up, and maybe show Tom a plushie. But no, it's been really great having you on tonight, Tom. So much good information. I feel like I should be paying you for coming on here and answering our questions. What are you working on now? Where can people find you? Let us know.
Yeah, so mostly working on the publishing business right now, tckpublishing.com. There's tons of free resources on there. Like we've got checklists on, if you're just getting started, how to self-publish your book and ebooks and print books and all that, and lots of good articles on marketing and building your platform as well. And also have a free video training course that walks you through the process of publishing your ebooks on Amazon, and then how to actually launch your book effectively at ebookpublishingschool.com. And then if you guys have any questions or just want help with your marketing or whatever, feel free to reach me personally, at tckpublishing.com. Just hit the contact form and I'll answer your emails personally.
Awesome. And people should subscribe to your podcast too. If they're already podcast listeners, why not add it to the queue? It was Publishing Profits. Is that the name of it? They can look up?
publishingprofitspodcast.com.
All right, cool. Well, and I'll put links to your sites on the show notes for episode 108, marketingsff.com. If you guys have any questions, come on by, leave a comment, and we'll try to get back to you. Again, thank you for coming on tonight, Tom. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.